Diesel cars have a special place in many people's hearts, providing reliable and efficient transportation for a lot of families. There is something romantic about having a car that you know will just keep working after many years and hundreds of thousands of kilometers later. It's like having an ugly wife. She cooks and cleans, she loves you a lot, and you know you can depend on her when hard times come. Same with a diesel car. Sure, it can be rough and noisy, but when that emergency comes, you know for a damn fact that you can turn it on and drive endlessly. With the advance of technology, diesel engines have evolved a lot, offering improved efficiency while, at the same time, becoming smoother and quite a bit more powerful. A notable brand that has pushed the diesel engines to its limits is BMW, achieving up to 400 horsepower, while still being economical and very smooth for a diesel. While being quite modern and powerful, this engine is nowhere close to being the most powerful diesel engine. Lately, big brands have really slowed down the development of the diesel engine as the emission regulations have gotten a lot stricter, but there was a time when emissions and ecology were just concepts on a piece of paper, and diesel was actually considered a lot cleaner than petrol. The 2000s were the golden era of diesels, as the technology advancement was at its peak, and manufacturers were racing towards making the fastest diesel. But before we touch the golden era, let's go back when it all started. The first diesel engine was produced in 1893 and was used in heavy-duty vehicles right away, but it wasn't used in passenger cars until 40 years later. The Mercedes 260D, internally known as the W138, was the first diesel production car. It was powered by a diesel 4-cylinder engine, with 2.6 liters of displacement, producing a colossal 45 brake horsepower. Originally, Mercedes wanted to fit a 6-cylinder diesel engine into the car, but the vibrations it produced were unacceptable, so they downsized it. The 260D proved to be a good seller, convincing Mercedes to invest more into the development of the diesel engine. Everyone was taking notice of the success Mercedes had, and started slowly investing into the diesel engine. GM, Peugeot and Citroën were the fastest manufacturers to take action, releasing a series of prototypes in upcoming years. Mercedes made the first swing for fast diesel when they turbocharged a 4.6L 6-cylinder, producing 113 horsepower. They soon scraped it as it was proven to be very unreliable. In the 70s, diesel really went mainstream, as the Volkswagen Golf became the first compact car to feature one, and by the end of the decade, Mercedes introduced the OM 617, the first turbocharged diesel engine, thus giving birth to the legendary turbo diesel era of Mercedes cars. This was a turning point for diesel-powered cars, as the upcoming years saw diesel engines ease the gap with petrols when it came to performance. Everyone followed through. Years later, BMW joined the party, releasing a 2.4-liter, 6-cylinder, turbocharged diesel engine producing only 115 horsepower. The 80s and 90s proved to be crucial for the diesel engine development, as a series of technological advances were made both in the manufacturing and in the engine electronic controls. Toyota introduces a microprocessor-controlled engine control unit for diesel engines, also known as the ECU. Mercedes introduces the electronically controlled injection pump. Fiat makes the first mass-produced car with a direct injection diesel engine. Then Audi introduces a turbocharged, intercooled, direct-injected, and electronically controlled diesel engine. BMW wins the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, with a modified E36 that had a 2-liter diesel engine that produced 240 horsepower and averaged during the race a fuel consumption of only 23 liters per 100 kilometers, which was half of the fuel consumption that the petrol cars had. The start of the new century marked the golden age for diesel cars, as the upcoming years would result in the craziest diesel engines we will ever see. The thirst for diesel torque from customers was increasing. This led to the Germans to mass-produce V8 diesel engines. First was Mercedes with its OM 628, a 4-liter V8, initially reducing 250 horsepower. But as time went by, they bumped its power up to 320 horsepower. This engine had an aluminum block, which is very unusual for diesel, as iron is the first choice against the high compression ratios. But Mercedes engineers didn't seem to care about physics and made an aluminum block that handled the 18.5:1 compression ratio. To put things into perspective, the latest AMG 4-liter V8, which also has an aluminum block, has a compression ratio of only 10.5 to 1. Followed by BMW with the M67, which was a quite advanced engine for the time, as it features a common rail, direct fuel injection, twin turbos using double overhead camshafts and 32 valves. It was initially a 3.9-litre engine producing 245 horsepower, later it had its displacement changed to a 4.4-litre, and was able to produce more than 300 horsepower. It won the Engine of the Year award for 2 years in a row. An Audi initially released a diesel V8, with a displacement of only 3.3 litres. It was as advanced as the BMW V8, putting out 225 horsepower, making it proportionally first in the power-to-displacement ratio, with more than 67 horsepower per litre. Just 3 years later, Audi released a 4-litre V8, producing 275 horsepower, and 650 Nm of torque, being the most powerful diesel at the time of the launch. This was only the beginning of the diesel insanity, as what was about to come next was not expected by anyone. Volkswagen dropped a bomb in 2003, with a 5-litre V10 diesel, producing over 300 horsepower and 750 Nm of torque. This turned out to be a pure publicity stunt by Volkswagen, as the engine turned out to be very complicated. It had an all-aluminum construction, featuring a balanced shaft to counteract vibrations, and all the turbos, and the complicated fuel injection system, and all the technology to make it pass emission testing, made the car quite unreliable. And on top of that, it wasn't fuel efficient, so the sales numbers were really bad, and Volkswagen scraped the engine after a couple of years. In the recent years this engine has built a cult following, and for good reason. An engine like this was hard to comprehend back then, and nowadays people don't see this kind of engines even in their dreams. What's crazier is that this isn't the biggest, or the most powerful diesel engine. But before we go there, let's stop in Munich, where BMW released the first twin-turbocharged, straight-six diesel, in 2004. The M57 was a 3-litre, 6-cylinder diesel engine, and with the help of 2 turbos, it was able to produce almost 290 horsepower and 600 Nm of torque, which wasn't far off the Volkswagen V10. This engine made a huge impact in the car world, and led the way of all the modern diesel engines to come. It was the first engine that could have a fuel economy of less than 7 litres per 100 kilometers, while producing 600 Nm of torque. In the meantime, Audi decides to take the diesel engine to the racetrack, dominating the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2006. Winning 36 out of the 48 races, he took part in showcasing the capabilities of the diesel engine. To commemorate this insane success, Audi does the most logical thing, and puts a V12 diesel engine inside a family SUV, creating a monstrosity with 4 wheels. The whole car weighed 2.7 tons. Normally, all this weight would be very difficult to move around, but not here, as the 6-litre V12 produced 500 horsepower and 1000 Nm of torque, which is more torque than most supercars today. This would be the end of diesel golden era, as fuel emission regulations got way stricter, making car manufacturers end production of any diesel engine with a bigger displacement than 3 litres. The last true innovation towards the development of the diesel came from BMW, strapping not 2, but 4 turbos, to a 3-litre 6-cylinder engine producing around 400 horsepower. Recognizable from the 50D badge, this crazy engine was powering BMW's biggest cars, like the 5 and 7 series, and SUVs like the X5 and the X7. The final blow to the diesel engine came in 2015, when the EPA found out the Volkswagen Group had installed software in his diesel engines to cheat on emission tests. This software, known as a defeat device, could detect when the vehicle was undergoing an emission test, and would activate full emission controls only during the test. Under normal driving conditions the cars would emit up to 40 times more nitrogen oxides than allowed by law. This absolutely crushed diesel car sales, dropping from 50% of all the car market, to 14% in the recent years, as car manufacturers are reducing offerings with diesel engines, and instead, are focusing in hybrids and electric cars. I don't know about you, but I don't really like how the future of diesel engines is looking right now. Please leave a comment to know your opinion on diesel cars, and if you watched until here, I ask you to subscribe and watch more videos from my channel. I'm sure you are going to love them.